enables you to continue to live the life that you want. And that's what your inside power is all about. So it says here in the book, if we as individuals, branch of the universal mind, would refer our difficulties in the same confident manner to the source from which we were projected, and use as remedies provided. Sorry, I gotta flip the page here. And when he says, ask and we shall receive. Now, this I talked about in the last lesson. And this is what we're talking about. You have to build the mental picture of what it is that you want. And when you believe in that, you ask and you receive. And I used reference from Wallace D. Wattles' book, where he talks about there's a substance, a thinking substance from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates and penetrates and fills the inner spaces of the universe. So we first have to believe in that substance. A thought in a substance produces a thing that is imaged by the thought. A man can form things in his thought, and by impressing this thought upon the formless substance can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. So we first have to believe that there is this thinking substance, which is all around us. And we know it is, because this is what happens. You get an idea, and the idea comes from the ether. The idea comes into your mind. You either decide to accept that as a great idea or you reject it. And that is entirely up to you. And then you start to form ways to make it happen. And this is the way everything is created in life. So we have to accept that fundamental idea that there is this thinking stuff, and that we can put a thought or an idea into it and cause that thing to be created. Okay. So when we look at that, it says everything animate or inanimate is called into existence or outstandingness by the power which itself does not stand out. Okay. There is nothing unusual or mysterious in the idea of your pictured desire coming into material evidence. It is the work in the universal natural law. So we have to understand this is the way things happen. This is the way inventors come up with ideas. They said that Thomas Edison, when he would be really stumped on some invention he was working on, that he would simply start thinking about it, and he would take a cat nap. And he put a rock in his hand so that if he fell asleep, then that would wake him up. But what he would do is he would get that picture in his mind of what it was he wanted the end result to look like. And then he would just relax and think about it and meditate, basically meditating on that idea. And then the idea would come to him and he'd try something else. Now, did it always work? Well, no. But that's the way he started creating things. Artists will do this. You can read stories about how, a sculpture, somebody might look at the block of granite, let's say, or marble that somebody's about to carve, and they just see a block. But the artist sees what's underneath it because they have the idea in their mind. And so, I used to show my children at school the movie Amadeus. Not the old parts of it, but in that movie, it talked about how Mozart just had ideas going around in his head. And the ideas were all there, and all he had to do was write them down. And that's the way things happen. You come up with an idea, and it's in your head, and you just have to put it into reality. For him, those ideas or those tunes were going around his head. He wrote them down so others could appreciate them. Right? So that's what I have to get you to realize, that it works the same for you and me as it did for Mozart, or for Michelangelo, or Da Vinci, or Edison. It's the same process. It's just, well, I was being told this story the other day, that somebody was asking, back when Bill and Melinda Gates were married, somebody was asking Bill Gates or Melinda Gates, if anybody just worked hard like he did, would they achieve the same success? And she said, no, because he doesn't think like most people. He thinks differently. This is what those great people do. Those people that have monumental success, they think differently. And that's what Andrew Carnegie was trying to get Napoleon Hill when he wrote Think and Grow Rich. He wanted him to go and study some of these highly successful people in history, or that were actually living in America at the time. And as he did that, he wanted him to be able to put that information into a book or into some form so that others could start to shift their thinking. And we're going to get to that a little bit later here. So we have to realize that mysterious thing going around it's the natural laws. That's the way it works. So your personal advance in evolution depends upon your right use of the power of visualizing. And your use of it depends on whether you recognize that you yourself are a particular center through which the originating spirit is finding ever new expression. So you have to realize that you have the power, and you have to realize that you can utilize it just like anybody else. Your mental picture, what it is that you want, what you desire, is the force of attraction that evolves and combines the originating substance into specific shape. You see, every idea in the mental then takes on a physical form. And so as you start to build that beautiful picture of what it is that you desire in your mind, it will start to show up to you in physical form. And creative spirit expresses itself. We're not competing with anybody. We are on a creative plane when we're doing this. And it says here, before you would entertain the idea of making a mental picture of your desire as being at all practical, you must have some idea of your being and who you are and what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And you see, that's why you have to really spend some time thinking, what is my purpose here? And I believe, not everybody believes this, but I believe that your purpose can change. I felt that early on in my life, my purpose was to be the very best mom and to raise my children to be strong believers in themselves and develop a good self-image. And so my first purpose was to mold and to develop my children to be competent members of society and to be successful in their own rights. And at the same time, I was educating children. And so I felt like my purpose was to be a teacher that encouraged children also. As my children grew up and became those competent adults, my purpose changed. So I believe your purpose can change. Some people are steadfast that you have one purpose in life and that's it. Who knows which the answer is. But I think you have to decide for yourself. I believe purposes can change. So if you've been under that teaching that you have one purpose in life and that's all you go for, maybe that's a way to say, I kind of feel that maybe your purpose can change, and that's okay. All right. So once you do this, it says, as your wish, your desire, and your recognitions grow into an intense desire, this desire becomes a clear mental picture. So you get this idea from the ether. You get, hey, that would be really awesome to have this or that, or, to do this or that, or become this or that. And, first it's just a thought. And you may just think, oh, that would be really cool, but it probably couldn't happen. And then you start to think, well, why couldn't it happen? I see this person doing it and that person doing this, and why couldn't it be me? And so you start to think about it, and then you start to develop it, and then it starts becoming this burning desire, something you have to do. When it becomes that intense burning desire, that's when you start to develop that clear mental picture of what it is you want. So I was on a call last week, and one of the people on that call was asking the leader of this group, so when you write down your goal, are you writing down your immediate goal, or are you writing down, like your long-term goal? And she said, oh no, I write down my long-term goal. She said, I write down the vision of what it is that I want, because sometimes that can be confusing. You see, I write down my goal every day. And so as I do it, I keep developing it. And when she said that, I thought, well, gee, my goal was more immediate. So I thought, that's not my goal. I've got to make it bigger, because when I write down my more extensive goal, where I see myself going, that's a vision that I can relay to my team. And so now I've got the team understanding where we're going. And so that makes a huge difference in how you're thinking. And it doesn't mean that you don't think about your immediate goals. Yes, you do. But chances are, when you start visualizing that bigger goal, those immediate goals start to come into being also. And in fact, that's why when I work with clients, I say, pick one or two goals. You may have 10 or 20 that you really want to achieve, but pick one or two, because your mind cannot focus on 10 or 20 goals at the same time. It becomes very confused. So pick the one that's most important, or two. Jen and I say pick a personal goal and a professional goal, and pick those goals. And when you do that, start to focus on those one or two. A lot of those other ones will start to be checked off along the way. So as you grow in understanding as to who you are, where you came from, and what your purpose of being is, how you are to fill that purpose for which you are intended, you will more and more afford a center through which the creative spirit of life can enjoy itself. So as you start to focus, as you start to develop it, as you start to understand what is happening and how these natural laws work, you start to work with the laws instead of against the laws. You see, the laws are there. The laws of the universe work for everybody the exact same way. And you can either work with them or you can work against them. You cannot work with them at all. If you don't understand them, then it becomes accidental, just like my son getting the scholarship, which, you can go back and listen to an episode about that. When he was going after scholarship, he didn't know about the laws. He was working with the laws, but he did not know what he was doing. And therefore, he's what we call a conscious incompetent, or unconscious incompetent. So he unconsciously was competent in creating that desire, but he didn't know what he was doing, so he couldn't repeat it. And that's when I stepped in, because I knew he had caused it to happen. I didn't know what he had done. And so I started to find out what it was he did. So here it says, all that there is, whether on the plane of visible or invisible, had its origin in a localized action of thought or of mental picture. And this includes yourself, because you are universal spirit localized. And the same creative action is taking place through you. So everything you see in visible or invisible plane, it's all part of the creative process. Now, there's a question here next in the book, and what it's talking about is, okay, so if we are capable of creating this wonderful life that we desire, and to becoming who we want to become, and having what we want to have, then why is there so much sickness and misery in the world? If this power, says here, if the same power and intelligence which brought the world into existence and is operating the mind of man, why does it not manifest itself in strength, joy, health, and plenty? Well, there's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? Why don't more people have this happen in our life? Here's your answer. The first reason is that few persons will take the trouble to inquire into the working principles of the laws of life. If they did, they would soon convince themselves that there is no necessity for sickness and poverty that we see about us. They would realize that visualizing is a principle and not a fallacy. Isn't that beautiful? You see, oftentimes we put that fear in our minds. And as we do that, we cause the very thing we do not want to manifest in our lives. Simple thing like our empty bank account or bills coming in. And that's all we think about is the negativity of the bills. And we don't think of the beauty of an abundance coming into our lives. We focus on what we do not want instead of focusing on what we do want. And when we can start shifting our thought process, we shift our results. So that can become a real sticking point in our lives. So we need to start focusing on what we want. If we want abundance, focus on abundance. If we want good health, focus on good health. I have a friend who has had some health issues in the past. She continually thinks about them, and her whole day revolves around them. When your life and your thought process is so caught up in you're not feeling well, or caught up in making sure everybody knows about what you're going through, that becomes your focus. And you continue to bring that into your life. When you start to shift that, and you start to shift your thought process to health or wealth, or the good things that you desire, and you start to see yourself enjoying those good things and living the life that you intend, you start to attract that to you. And you start to attract the people into your lives. Now, sometimes, and please keep this in mind, sometimes you will bring people into your life and you will not realize that they're the answers. So not too long ago, I got an email or got a message somehow, and it was the person I needed to come into my life to help me to scale my business. And at first, I did not accept it. That person was sent to me. And now I'm so blessed to have that person in my life to help me. But sometimes we can actually reject the very thing that's in front of us. Why is it? Because we do not study. So the race as a whole is not willing to give the time required to study. This is not something that you learn once. I had somebody I was on the phone with, and I was trying to show them and trying to help them realize that they had a mindset issue problem, and that's what I specialize in, and that my program that I have is very good at helping people overcome limiting beliefs. And she looked at me and she said, well, that's not my problem. I don't have limiting beliefs. And I thought at that moment, yes, you do, because everybody I know has some type of limiting beliefs. You see, what she was really saying is, I've already paid somebody to help me with that, and I don't need to pay anybody else. You cannot work hard enough on overcoming your limiting beliefs or overcoming the self-image you hold of yourself. And that was one of her major problems, the self-image she was holding. And you see, we think that because we've maybe did a little bit of this work, that we have all the answers. You do not have all the answers. I look at my mentor and friend, Bob Proctor, who studied this information for over 60 years. 60 years. And every day he'd study. Every single day. He and Sandy Gallagher would make phone calls daily, and they'd read a chapter together. And he did it every day. Why? because he knew he didn't know it all. As successful as he was, and as many people as he had helped to make millions of dollars, he knew he still needed to study, and he still didn't know it all. Now, if he didn't know it all after studying over 60 years, do you think maybe we need to study a little more? So in here it says, if you will insist upon mentally seeing yourself surrounded by things and conditions as you wish them to be, you will understand that the creative energy sends its plastic substance, that, formless substance, in the direction indicated by the tendencies of your thoughts. Herein lies the advantage of holding your thoughts in the form of a mental picture. So if we hold those thoughts in our mind with the will, and we think of them often, and we see ourselves in the situation we want to be in, so we don't see maybe the house that we're living in, we pretend in our imagination we're in the house we really want to live in. I was thinking recently, my mom passed away, and I was telling somebody she had dementia. And so she really forgot that she and my dad had built this house after they retired. And she had that picture of this house on the refrigerator. And it was so funny because it was a fairly large house, and it had 4 bedrooms in it. And each one of my kids, I have 3 children, each one of them picked out which bedroom they wanted. And they decided how those bedrooms were, what color carpet they wanted and so on in their bedrooms. And she held that picture there for a couple of years before they built the house. But when they built the house, they built that house. They didn't go and find a house. They found a piece of land so they could build that house because it had become such a burning desire. She looked at it every time she opened up the refrigerator. What kind of things are you doing mentally to picture what it is you want every time you open your refrigerator? Maybe that's what we need to do. Put that picture on our refrigerator so that we can start having the idea of that house or that car or that position or whatever in our minds. And that constant reminder every time we open the refrigerator, there it is. The more enthusiasm and faith you're able to put into your picture, the more quickly it will come into visible form. Listen to that again. The more enthusiasm and faith. Faith is the belief that's going to happen. Faith is when you step out and there's no doubt in your mind that it's going to be that way. So the more enthusiasm you can put into it, the quicker it will come into visible form. Enthusiasm is increased by keeping your desire secret. I remember reading a story once or hearing a story about somebody who thought he was supposed to tell everybody what his goal was and what it was his mental picture was. It actually slows it down. So keep it a secret. Maybe 1 or 2 trusted people, but other than that, keep it a secret. Why? Because most people who do not understand these laws will discourage you. Now, if you have a coach or, if you're working with me, that's fine, because guess what? I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to help you develop that mental picture. I'm going to help you to achieve the good that you desire. But most people out there don't understand this, remember, because most people won't take the time to study. And so they will not encourage you. That's why you want to keep it secret. So you don't have any of those, even just a simple sentence of, well, how do you think you're going to do that? See, that question makes you start to question or doubt that you can do it. So you need to be very careful who you share it with. So you want to keep it a secret. Okay. The more perfectly a secret between your mind and outer self is guarded, the more vitality you give your power of attraction. So another reason to keep it secret. So you want to keep that mental picture going. Never doubt. Now, you also don't want to have any stress or pressure. Like you don't want to have to like force yourself to continually push yourself into the situation. You want to relax. and believe and allow the universe to help you. Allow it to happen. So here it says, all you have to do is to make such a mental picture of your heart's desire, hold it cheerfully in a place with your will, always conscious that the same infinite power which brought the universe into existence brought you into form for the purpose of enjoying itself in and through you. Now, if the same power that brought the universe into existence is existing in you, brought you here, don't you think that same power can help you get the desires of your life? It is this power which enables you to transfer your thoughts from one form to another, from the invisible to the visible, from the dream to reality. It is the simplest thing in the world to give this highly sensitive substance any form you will through visualizing. And once you really believe that your mind is a center through which this plastic substance of all there is in the world takes involuntary form, the only reason why your picture does not materialize is because you have introduced something antagonistic to the fundamental principle. Very often, this destructive element is caused by the frequency with which you change your mental picture. This is another reason why you don't want to share this secret with others, because when we change our minds, often because maybe somebody put a little doubt, or we put our own doubt with our limiting beliefs in there, and we keep changing that picture, you're confusing everything. The plastic substance with which you are mentally dealing is more sensitive than the most sensitive photographer's film. What happens if you go to take a picture? Now, you can't really do so much with cell phones, but in the days when you had film and you moved, instead of holding still, you moved. You blur the picture. That's what you're doing when you change your idea often. You're blurring the mental image of what it is you want. Your results in visualizing and your desires may be imperfect or delayed through the misuse of power. Owning to the thought that the fulfillment of your desires is contingent upon certain persons or conditions. The originating principle is not in any way dependent upon any person, place, or thing. It has no past and knows no future. So if you think this has to happen, or I have to meet this person, or that person has to be involved, no, you don't know everything. If my son had thought there was only one way, which he did, to get a college scholarship and not allowed the universe to give him another way, he wouldn't have gotten his scholarship. He allowed the universe to send him in a different direction, even though he wasn't happy about it. Says here, the law is that the originating creative principle of life is the universal here and everlasting now. It creates its own vehicles through which to operate. Therefore, past experience has no bearing upon your present picture. So do not try to obtain your desires through a channel that may not be natural for it, even though it may seem reasonable to you. We have to allow the universe to come to us and to share with us exactly what it is that it knows, and we cannot be in control when that happens. I hope this makes sense. Please share your thoughts with me and look me up on Facebook and LinkedIn. This is Patricia Stepler with Your Inside Power. Make it a great day and be the magic in your dreams.